So hello everyone, and welcome to the session on reimagining the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I'm Ruchi, the MC for today's session, and I extend a very warm welcome on behalf of GAME as well as ADDA to all our panelists who are here today with us, and to all those watching us and following this discussion via our social media handles. A quick introduction to GAME and ADDA. As you all know, GAME is an alliance of partners working to create a thriving environment for mass entrepreneurship in India. And ADDA is an initiative supported by GAME, and it works on building entrepreneurial muscle through cutting-edge social learning practices. The topic for today's discussion is reimagining the entrepreneurship ecosystem. As you can well understand, given how vast and nuanced this topic is, it actually lends itself to a much longer 3 to 5 day format. So today we will really kick off this conversation and hope to continue it with the larger ecosystem over the coming year. We hope that all of you watching this program will share your views and ideas on this topic with us to enable us to have a real conversation over the coming year around building an entrepreneurial ecosystem which is real, contextual, and which truly empowers the entrepreneur. Our panelists today include both the entrepreneurs as well as our ecosystem partners to make it a real conversation. Let me briefly introduce you to them. We have Yukti and Samir representing the entrepreneurs. Yukti is the promoter of Kosha, which is involved in making travel wear, especially for higher altitudes. She's also a certified mountaineer. Uh, Samir is the promoter of Haldi Vita, which is focused on creation of healthy turmeric-based products. And we have our partners who work closely with entrepreneurs in building their entrepreneurial muscle and supporting them through their journeys. We have Rashid Navlaki, founder of Jigsaw Thinking, which works with entrepreneurs in the area of business strategy, leadership, and innovation. We have Anmol Garg, founder of Sales Fire, a sales training company. By the way, he's also a stand-up comedian, and his comedy is focused around entrepreneurship, sales, and marketing. And lastly, but not the least, we have Mekin and Nirav. Mekin is the facilitator for the session. He's the co-founder of GAME and the founder of Udyam Learning Foundation, which works on enabling grassroots entrepreneurship for young Indians. And Nirav, he runs the ADDA platform and works closely with entrepreneurs in the ADDA community. So welcome everyone once again. Looking forward to a very invigorating session. Over to you, Mekin, to take the discussion forward.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you everyone for joining. Looking forward to this session on reimagining the entrepreneurship ecosystem. I think before we get into what does reimagining this ecosystem look like, I'd love to start from the place of what is the entrepreneur's experience of the current ecosystem, right? So one, is there an ecosystem? Is it supportive? And most of all, is the ecosystem currently entrepreneur-centric? We have a lot of things happening. So there is a lot of action for sure in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. But how supportive is it of the entrepreneur? How centered on the entrepreneur is it? To take us through that bit, I'd like to invite our two entrepreneurs on the panel, Yukti and Samir, to share their experiences of their interactions with the entrepreneurship ecosystem in forms that they may have had. I'd love for you to take a stab at sharing an inspiring positive and also something that you wish the system did, but so far you haven't experienced it. So with that, Yukti, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Mekit. So I think the current ecosystem where the people who provide services, it takes away agency from the entrepreneur, making us feel fairly inadequate. Even if the venture is profitable, we don't qualify for a secured loan. SIDBI will fund organizations that have over 50 employees. But what about the MSMEs? So there's clearly a change needed in the system, which supports the MSMEs who are going to be the workhorses of the economy of tomorrow. In terms of an inspiring, example that I've seen, I would go back to the mountaineering community and the community in Himachal Pradesh, where I spent about 3 months at the time of researching for Kosha. I met a lot of business owners, from adventure tour operators to cafe owners, farmers, homestay owners, and they welcomed a city dweller with absolute open arms, no judgment whatsoever, made friends for life. They were tough. When it came to climbing a mountain, they were not easy on me. 4 years hence, when Kosha came up with the first campaign shoot in snow, we chose Himachal, and everything on ground, right from logistics to production, was taken care of. No questions asked. It's the best shoot we have ever had in my absence. I was not even there. So the whole that ecosystem kind of came back and has been backing us all through.
So I think that's very well depicted, Yukti. But I would just like to ask one question to everybody. I mean, all the entrepreneurs. Isn't ecosystem like a plugin? I mean, you've got to have the basic software which you have to develop yourself. You have to develop the basic process flow yourself. This ecosystem is like a plugin. I mean, okay, you're missing out a particular link. Is there somebody to support you on that particular link or not? If you miss out on B, you will miss out on C. But unfortunately, what happens, entrepreneurs, like, I mean, I'm not talking of any one person in particular, but generally the way people want everything should be given to them on a platter. Okay, there should be somebody to guide them, there should be a mentoring, there should be a place where they can sit and operate from, somebody should come and fund them, then there's somebody who could guide them on the market, they should open up the market for them. I mean, what I'm finding is everybody is looking for an easy way out. And like the other day, I was talking to somebody, and the first thing which I told them was, I said, like, there is too much of glamour which has been attached to this entrepreneurship. I mean, jobs are very glamorous, but there's too much of glamour attached. So a person doesn't realize that he has to put the puzzles, the pieces of puzzles together. Only the small missing links will be provided by whatever ecosystem we may call it. Personally, I feel there is no such thing as ecosystem. They are elements. You know, there could be a financial element, there could be a marketing element, there could be, manpower element, but these are elements. There is no such thing as ecosystem. Ecosystem means like a complete holistic picture. And if that is given, then what is the work of entrepreneur? He just has to sit and relax. And all these plugins, the people will come from all directions. They'll provide him with the stuff, like all the mana will be given to him and the broth will be prepared. That's my
I love
take.
this. Like we already have two different points of views on is the entrepreneurial journey entrepreneur led primarily, and it's a solo journey that every entrepreneur has to do for themselves. And this reminds me of there was this one particular event which had almost bullied Sachin, the Flipkart founder, to be a keynote speaker. This is a startup event back in like 2011, and he opened his speech with, if you are an entrepreneur and if you are listening to me and not talking to your customer, you're wasting your time. Right. So I think there is clearly merit in thinking about that. Hey, yes, the entrepreneur has to do a whole bunch of things themselves, right? But to Yukti's point, an entrepreneur is a seed, right? And like, hey, that seed needs, while it can fight, it'll do a lot. It's really hard for it to grow in a desert for a long time. Right? So some rain once in a while, some support, some nutrition coming from roots elsewhere might actually help it grow. So I think with that, I'd love to bring in Anmol and Rashid, both of who are key enablers and have had experiences of enabling multiple entrepreneurs, to talk about their experience of what have they found to be most impactful in their journeys of enabling entrepreneurs, and again their experience of what they wish the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And Samirji's pushed us to think about like, hey, should we even think of it as an ecosystem, or is it a support system, right? Or is it some other thing, some tidbits that just are there for the entrepreneurs to take on when they need them? But to Anmol and Rashid, what have been your experiences working with entrepreneurs, and uh, in there again, what are some of the most inspiring experiences you have seen where you've seen the ecosystem like really do stuff for the entrepreneur? So Anmol, if you'd like to start, and then Rashid.
Sure. I think the entrepreneurship ecosystem is like marriage, right? I mean, there are obviously a lot of advantages, but there are those things you regret as well. So it's both sides of the coin. Uh, there is a strong ecosystem that's built over the last few years. Yes, it does exist, and it is entrepreneur friendly. I'll have to accept it. It's helped me personally. My co-founder is someone I met at an incubator. I've been part of two incubators. One is called SLP, the Startup Leadership Program. One is NEN, the National Entrepreneurship Network by Wadhwani. And I found tremendous advantages being a part of both. As I said, my co-founder is someone I met at the incubator. My first 4 customers were people I met again at startup events, right? And it was so easy for me to connect to the right PG because of connections that I've built in the ecosystem. In fact, my girlfriend is someone I met at a startup event. So, right. So I think I have gained a lot from the ecosystem. Of late, we've been talking about mental health. We've been talking about how do we support each other. And so our bond is so strong. You know, my co-fellows at the cohort of the incubator, I've attended their marriages outside of different countries as well. So I think if I have a problem, I know maybe I cannot rely on my parents or my neighbor, but there's this guy who's going to listen to my bullshit and going to convince me because he's also in the same bullshit. So we connect at that wavelength. So obviously there are a lot of merits. Coming to some of the demerits, is the system biased? Is the system biased towards technology? Is the system biased towards educational institutes, the IITs? So there are a lot of biases in the system, which I believe we need to fight to make it a level playing ground. For instance, if I were to pitch to Mikin, and my pitch would be that my startup uses deep neural networks and artificial intelligence to simulate cutting-edge cognitive dissonance by incorporating blockchain, machine learning, and AI to leverage IoT and other functional analytical models to predicting performance based on behavioral sciences. Right. So this is what is the problem with this ecosystem. Everyone wants to use these glamorous words and raise funding based on this. And even the investors, if I can be, be more of a generalist, they get swayed away by all of this. But what exactly is AI? How exactly will it be applicable? No one knows, right? So I think it's more of making that pitch very glamorous to raise funding so that I can come in the newspapers. I can show my parents I'm doing something. Not focusing on unit economics, getting swayed away by the vanity metrics. But चलो मैंने कर दिया ना, पेपर में आ गया, चलो मैं entrepreneur हूँ, startup है, card है, मेरा pocket में, I'm the CEO. Right? So these are some things that we really need to talk deep into and move to a level where these are not challenges anymore.
Awesome, Rashid.
Thanks, Mikin. So since everybody is coming up with an analogy, I thought I'll take a crack at my favorite one as well. So I'm a self-proclaimed nerd, and I love fantasy books. Okay, and I'm still listening. I'm re-listening to the 7th book of Harry Potter right now. Okay, so I'll use a Harry Potter analogy. So to me, and this was provoked by what Samir said as well. To me, entrepreneurship is like an adventure, and Harry goes on an adventure, right? And he's got this goal that he really has, and he needs to vanquish the Dark Lord, but I obviously won't take his name for obvious reasons. Now, he needs to vanquish the Dark Lord, and it is his journey. It is his adventure. He has to put in all of the hard work. He has to take all of the risks. But by no means does that mean that he's alone in that journey. There is guidance that comes from the wise old wizard. There is support that comes at every turn from his 2 best friends. There is real talk that comes from his parents' friends over at different points in time. So to me, the entrepreneur ecosystem is by no means saying that the entrepreneur does not have to do the hard work. The entrepreneur is the one who has to go on this adventure themselves, but an entrepreneur has to have the ability and the opportunity to be able to tap into different things that they need at different points in time. And so to me, I think about an ecosystem as something that needs to be available. And then the entrepreneur knows what they need to tap into at different points in time. So I agree. I feel like I agree with half of what Samir sir said and disagree with the other half. I do think it's plug and play, but I don't think the entrepreneur journey is glamorous enough that they're not sort of doing the hard work of getting there, because at the end of the day, Harry even had to die a little bit literally to achieve his goals. So it is tough as an entrepreneur. In terms of what I wish the entrepreneur ecosystem had a bit more of is, again, sticking to this analogy of an adventure. Different entrepreneurs want to go on different adventures. To me, it feels like the entrepreneur ecosystem is encouraging and sometimes pigeonholing entrepreneurs into every entrepreneur wants to go on the same adventure. Every entrepreneur wants to get their first 100 paying clients, then they want to get funding, then they want to get funded, then they want to scale, then they want to reach a break-even point where the burn goes down. And it seems like we have sort of shoved this narrative down the entrepreneur's throat even before they jump into that journey. But from my personal experience, I have interacted with so many solopreneurs, freelancers starting out, who initially might be very happy going on the adventure of, I want to make sure that I can sustainably earn 2 lakhs a month. And that's my entrepreneur adventure. And that's what I'm excited about. And that's what I'd like help with. But I don't know of too many elements in the ecosystem that help with goals like that. It feels like the entrepreneur ecosystem is designed for specific goals that we think all entrepreneurs should have. And there are a lot of other goals that entrepreneurs do have that we don't seem to cater to right now. So what I think is missing in the entrepreneur ecosystem is empathy, and that each entrepreneur is different. Each entrepreneur needs choice of what they want to tap into, adventures they want to go on. And till we learn that lesson, the ecosystem is going to stay conceptual and help a certain set of entrepreneurs who fit the social norm that we've designed for them.
Thank you, Rashid. Fantastic. You talked about pigeonholing towards almost a template that the entrepreneurial ecosystem drives you towards. And one of the largest milestones in that template is the F word that Anmol dropped, which is funding, right? That entrepreneurship is all about funding. Somehow get funded, get yourself in the newspaper, and that apparently has become a larger goal than serving customers. Right? And so there are these, what you would say, malaise in the current ecosystem. Right, that the lack of entrepreneur centricity, or the lack of empathy, as you called it, and agency, as Yukti called it, that, hey, the entrepreneur doesn't necessarily have choice. How, in your ways, right, and this is back to you, Yukti, to what are ways in which you think someone else can enable choice for you? Back to Samir's point, isn't choice something that you have to take in your own hands and drive? Do you imagine, or have you experienced an ecosystem or support where it actually provided more agency to you, it provided more choice to you? And if yes, then how does that, like, help us picture it, right? Could you describe it for us?
I'll take this point initially. First I'll take this point. Samir.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay. No, it's very interesting to hear out the discussion and see the various viewpoints, hear out, the other people as well. I mean, partially it will answer your question, but partially it will take the discussion forward. One is like, I compare, this entrepreneurship to like a dream. When you go to sleep in the night and when you dream, I mean, not necessarily, you decide who's going to be a part of your dream. Okay. You think of a snake, the snake will be there. If you think of some friend, he'll be there. And not necessarily that friend is actually there, but you have made him a part of your dream. Same thing happens in entrepreneurship. The beauty of entrepreneurship is, the beauty of, this starting any kind of an organization or an entity is, you can go back, erase a few things and start afresh, which is not possible in life. Okay. So like when we say it's a journey, a lot of people say it's a journey. So again, I contest that. I say journey, it's like, you just keep on going to and fro in a journey. Like, I mean, you go, you say, okay, I've traveled 15 kilometers, but I've gone in the wrong direction. I would like to go back and take the other road. Okay, so that's the beauty of this entrepreneurship, which is not so much in life. Okay, so I mean, if you know what is your destination, you will go the right way. And even if you take a little deviation, you will get back on your track. So, but ecosystem, what happens, when we talk of ecosystem, it's all very predefined. It's like, I mean, the dependence on that ecosystem gets so predefined that you take 5 steps and you expect something to be there on the roadside. You take another 7 steps, you expect something to be there. And if that doesn't happen, suddenly a person gets shaken up. Like this funding thing. Now, plan A, plan B, there'll be a lot of lectures, funders will be explained. You go to all these, startup community talks and all. A lot of gyan will be given around that. But actually, what happens is I have been mentoring quite a few companies also. So many companies, they kind of go flat only because they've not got funding. They were not ready for plan B. Even they had plan B, I mean, they didn't know what to do with it. You see, so there's too much of dependence. Ecosystem is fine. I mean, ecosystem is there. Like, I totally agree. I mean, with Anmol, what Anmol said was a very valid point. There is an ecosystem. He met his co-founder there. He met other people there. But those are just a little bit of supportive things. I mean, his co-founder didn't come with a built-up ecosystem, built-up, corporate or an entity. They built it up together. There was only a very small element that he met somebody, they vibed with each other, and they became a part of the, kind of a journey. That's what I would like to say.
So, if we go back to the times when my grandfather was an entrepreneur, when my mom was an entrepreneur, and now I'm an entrepreneur, the dynamics of the global economy have changed so much that I mean, I don't remember them talking about a support system, but I have seen how lonely the journey was. And then now, when I see the difference, in terms of the access I have to different community groups, it's a much more holistic experience. And the same thing happened during the pandemic. When we just started into the lockdown, there was absolutely no clarity as to how are we going to, survive or pass through this phase. Lockdown 1 went on to lockdown 2, 2.0 went down to 3.0, and it just kept going on. While there were so many, there was a huge sort of support that came through from the government, but it was just for the sake of it. Nothing really came down to the ground levels. I had the opportunity to interact with Nitin Gadkari, who was the MSME minister. Even made the case in front of him, but nothing came down. And it was at this point in time when the ecosystem, which is Adda, made me realize that that you can do it on your own because you have built valuable assets in the form of your customers, in the form of your vendor relations, and that is what we tapped into. And I'm very happy to say that 6 months down the line, the company continues to exist.
Okay. I think what I've seen happen, or what I've heard happen on this panel, is that I've seen people go from strong disagreement to, I agree with different parts of what you're saying. Right. I've had Rashid agree with parts of what Samir said. Samir agree with what Anmol saying, even though the starting points were very distinctive. So we made progress, we made movement on this. But I think one of the things that we are struggling with is just trying to imagine, like, hey, what is the entrepreneur's role and what is the ecosystem's role, right? What I sense Samir says is that, hey, entrepreneur is the one who has to do most of the stuff, the ecosystem is doing some small supportive things around, right? So you met someone's one chance event, and then there's a whole lot of other pieces that need to happen. I'd love to get Anmol and Rashid's perspective on this before we get into an action of like trying to demystify or maybe understand ecosystem in languages other than just words. So we'll get to that, but first, Anmol,
Sure.
your views.
Sure. So I love that question. What should the entrepreneur do and where does the ecosystem come in? So making it more tangible, I believe it's an 80-20 ratio, right? 80% of the work is what the entrepreneur has to do. And 20% is the support which he or she can go out and the ecosystem kind of delivers. Having said that, there are countries where there's very little support and these entrepreneurs have gone on to do great things. So even without an ecosystem, an entrepreneur can thrive. But I believe 80% of the work, as Samir was saying, it's entrepreneur driven, right? I cannot just wait for, so for instance, I run a sales training company, right? So when I work with entrepreneurs, they are like, yeah, tum log kar lo sales pura mera, bas samal lo sales, right? So that's the easy way out. They're looking for the shortcuts. They're always like, sales is not my cup of tea, right? But it's very important for them to do their get their first 5 B2B clients, because they need to understand where their product is falling short, or probably 50 B2C clients, right? And then probably put a sales team in place which can do it for you. So yes, people are looking for shortcuts, and they are looking for the ecosystem to kind of replace and do all the hard work on their behalf, which is not going to work. And I love what Rashid said as well. There's a lack of empathy. I think the ecosystem is promoting a singular objective of how big can a startup be in a world where we are glamorizing unicorns. I think if you're not a unicorn or you're not on that path, people look at you as a chota mota entrepreneur hai, right? If you look at startup events, there'll always be the investor part to it. Log kaise aayenge, ek startup investors ko bulayenge to log aa jayenge. I've been part of those discussions, right? So the idea is to just say, okay, investors are coming, come meet them. So this is the startup event, 3-day event, right? So it's a very singular objective which is currently being driven. I think it was good in the start to raise the eyeballs. So I think a lot of people woke up when they read headlines, this company raised $10 million. So I think it was good in a way when it started off. But I think it's now time to for the ecosystem to accept everyone and help them achieve their objective, vis-a-vis showing just one story of how big this unicorn is and the kind of money that they've raised.
Rashid, your thoughts on the same, right? What should the entrepreneur do and what should the ecosystem do?
So I think that's a great question. My answer is, I think at a high level, it's pretty simple, which is it depends on the entrepreneur. Each entrepreneur decides what their role is and what the ecosystem's role is. As an entrepreneur, the one thing you are in charge of more than anything else is making decisions. That's really what entrepreneurship comes down to a large extent. It's making decisions. So as an entrepreneur, you need to decide, what are you going to do yourself? What do you need support with? How resourceful are you going to be with the ecosystem that already exists? If the support does not exist, are you going to spend time building a skill set yourself? Are you going to go and find it elsewhere, where it's not that apparent? It really depends on the entrepreneur. I have worked with entrepreneurs who have been on either end of the spectrum, and neither of them is right and neither of them is wrong. They have just picked what works for them. I have worked with entrepreneurs who say that they don't just want to build a startup, they want to go on a learning journey as well. And that's a core objective for them. It's not just a side objective. And if that's the objective, they try and do a lot of things themselves and go to the ecosystem for learning and nothing else. There are other entrepreneurs who believe that their role in the business is very singular and they should only focus on one particular aspect on the business because that's their strength. And anything that is not their strength, they will find ecosystem partners to partner with so that the other stuff can get enabled. And I think both of those are absolutely fine. There's no, and I'm sorry for sounding a bit like a broken record, but there is no one answer to what the entrepreneur should do and what the ecosystem should do. It's the decision of the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is the center of everything, but they can decide how resourceful they want to be or whether they need support from the ecosystem. So choice is at the heart of everything, in my view.
I would say choice should be. but I feel like your answer is too politically correct. So I'm going to provoke you.
Sure.
I feel the ecosystem is doesn't do anything, right? Right? That the like all it does is events. Anmol referred to them, right? That acha aao milo. You have some networking. You talk to each other, and even the talking to each other is all guarded. You're most likely on your best behavior. Because there might be an investor lurking around, and you want to figure out and polish your 2-minute pitch or your 30-second pitch. You're not really, it is an event or is the ecosystem solving any real problems, right? So if we can now lift the hood, and now Rashid, I'd want to start with you and then
Sure.
go backwards, that what is the real value that the ecosystem is providing or can provide, right? Is it actually asking hard questions of the entrepreneurs?
So I think, Mekin, for me, and perhaps why there potentially is a difference of opinion is because perhaps our definitions of what is included in the ecosystem is different, right? So for me, the ecosystem does not at all stop at networking events as like one example, right? Or the people who support you with funding. For me, the ecosystem, what forms the ecosystem is anything and everything that can enable an entrepreneur. So the entrepreneur needs to decide what their ecosystem is. I don't believe there is this mythical ecosystem that exists and then everybody decides whether they want to be a part of it or not. For me, again, it's around myself as an entrepreneur, and I'll talk from personal experience, not as an enabler, but as an entrepreneur myself. For me, it was, I'm at the heart of this and I need to build this business out. What ecosystem do I need to put in place around me? And if there are elements that already exist, great, I'll use them. But if there aren't, then it's my responsibility to build the ecosystem around me that enables me and solves real problems. So for me, when I work, one of the people I've worked with over the last 3 years is a really young, bright entrepreneur named Amir. He's all of 24 years old, and I believe he's going to be an absolute world beater. I believe he's part of my ecosystem because he is great at prototyping with digital tools. Now, is he part of a formal entrepreneur ecosystem that just exists and I just have to tap into him? No, I had to go and search and find what this ecosystem is for me. So I think the distinction over here is, to me, it's not a generic ecosystem that exists. An entrepreneur needs to build an ecosystem around them. There are certain elements that are already mature in the ecosystem that you can just tap into. Wonderful communities like Ada and Game we have over here, others for funding that we've talked about a lot. And then there are a whole bunch of gaps which are not mature parts of the ecosystem. But it's the responsibility of the entrepreneur to build that ecosystem for themselves. Then it will solve valuable problems. Otherwise, why would it? It's nobody else's responsibility to solve the entrepreneur's valuable challenges unless they choose to solve them.
So, Anmol, same question to you.
Yeah, there's one more bit that I want to add. More than startups in India today, we have startup mentors, right? सब लोग LinkedIn पे जाके लिख रहे हैं unicorn mentor, 10x entrepreneur. My company itself is called Series 5x, by the way. So I am part of that plan. I think that's where the challenge is. If everyone's a mentor, who do we go to? Right? And a lot of entrepreneurs can't figure out who's the right person should I talk to. Right? So I think the quality of the ecosystem also needs to improve, which is one, the people themselves, those who are mentoring. Second is, how does an entrepreneur figure out who is the right business mentor to talk to? If I talk to person X, for instance, my earlier startup, I went to this guy and he was someone came from a very corporate background and he was all about business plan, focusing on the plan first and then figuring out things. On the other side, there was this gentleman who was like, plan, chodo, get onto the ground, let's see how this goes. Okay, two very different line of thoughts. And back then, I didn't know what should I be doing. And I was confused. I followed a guy and then realized, nahi yaar, plan mein kuch nahi rakha hai. You need to be on the field, understand what the customer wants. So the quality of people need to improve. That's one. And how do we figure out who is the right person to help me? I think that is still missing in the ecosystem. There's a lot of information. It's overwhelming at times. I think now we need to declutter and go to a system where there is lesser kind of information, because sometimes less is more.
So very poor signal to noise ratio. Right? You have a lot of people, a lot of mentors. You don't know who's good. You have no Zomato of mentors, no rating on mentors,
Yeah.
no reviews, so no product experiences. No that yeah, this guy is an stay away. Right.
We need people like you. What I said in 5 minutes, you summed it up in 4 words. Less noise to signal ratio. That's exactly, who can keep it crisp and to the point.
No, thank you, guys. Thank you. Like I think you are the folks who, and I think in all of this, what's becoming clearer to me is that the word ecosystem is fuzzy, right? That it means different things to different people. So yeah, we'll. Uh, I think now is a yeah, now is a good time for us to break out into trying to picture what does this ecosystem, or what does our ideals ecosystem mean to each one of us. uh, so I'm now going to request all of us, so we'll break out into smaller groups, uh, and work both individually and then in a group to try and draw out what does uh, what does our vision of the ideal ecosystem look like, what's happening in it. I know as educated folks, we have a lot of tendency of using language. So you will draw 2 lines and then you will label them with 10 words, right? My strong request to you and the audience who wants to participate in this exercise is to avoid using words, right? Let the picture do the depiction, right? And I am a horrible artist, right? I have failed because of my handwriting in subjects. So, matlab, your bar is reasonably low. So don't worry about the beauty of it. And you will get, like, I think at the end of it, we'll each take a minute to describe what we intended and why we drew what we drew, right? But it is I think this group's already been great at using analogies. I think in some sense, it is about now taking it to the next level and making it pictorial. So I'm gonna request that we get broken up into the breakout rooms. And Ruchi, if you're around, if you would like to navigate us through that process.
So, hello once again, guys. As I said earlier, we'd love for this discussion to be open to the larger ecosystem and continue it well beyond this session. So, whilst our panelists are busy sketching out an aspirational entrepreneurial ecosystem, I invite all those watching us to also reimagine an aspirational ecosystem. And as Mekin said, ideally use a paper and a pen and sketch your own thoughts. Use analogies if you think that's useful for you, and really get your creative juices flowing. Please do, once you've done this, please do share these thoughts, ideas, analogies, whatever you've drawn into the comment section of our social media handles. As you will see, it's already on the screen now. So we are on LinkedIn, on our website, on our Facebook page. And do, when you post your views on what your aspirational ecosystem would be, please do hashtag the hashtags that I provided here on the slide, so that everybody following this conversation can comment, view at their own. And it would be great if you could share one key action that we can take today, which is crucial for developing this new and aspirational ecosystem, which has the entrepreneur as its center, which has value for the entrepreneur, which provides more choices to the entrepreneur such that they can pick and choose what works for them. And as one of the panelists said, it's not a pigeonhole where everybody has to go through the same experience, and they have the ability to pick and choose what they want. So what would that aspirational ecosystem look like? And guess what? The winning comments will win a surprise gift from both Game and Adda. So there's an added incentive for you. So do join us, comment, share, and follow this conversation on our social media handles. let me take this opportunity to also introduce you to a few of Adda and Games ecosystem partners who could not join us today and who are not on our panel with us today, but are equally doing some very interesting and innovative work with entrepreneurs, and really trying to build this ecosystem, which is of value and has the entrepreneur at the center. So first, we have unsolved.xyz.
My name is Ishwar. I'm the founder of unsolved.xyz. And I want to start by just saying a simple fact: 9 out of 10 startups fail. Is this a global truth, or do you think that this is a problem that needs solving? We thought it was a problem, and it's a very, very, very big problem. 10 million founders on LinkedIn. How do you go about solving for 10 million founders? And these are people who have actually founded a company. What about those who just have a side projects, those who have just at an idea stage? Just look, especially when incubators and accelerators can only accept perhaps 20 to 30 people in every cohort, right? How do you actually go out and teach the millions of people who want to become entrepreneurs how to become an entrepreneur? We think the answer lies in using a technology platform where founders can learn, network, and succeed. How will they do that? Our fundamental thought process around, can you learn from founders who are just slightly ahead in the journey? So idea stage guys learn from people who are building learn from people who are founders, and founders learn from successful founders, right? How do you enable all of this seamlessly on a technology platform? That's essentially what we're up to at Unsolved. It would be great for anyone who thinks it's interesting. Please hop on unsolved.xyz and check us out.
So that was unsolved.xyz. The second partner that we are showcasing today is Ventures Theatre.
Stakeholder management is an important behavioral aspect of any business. Gaining or retaining confidence of the investors, customers, or the employees is a challenge that every business faces at various stages in their journey. Imagine Rakesh, a startup entrepreneur, in fourth round of discussion with Naina, a senior corporate executive, where they are exploring to work together and Rakesh is trying to steer the conversation.
Let me ask you, how do you think you were selected for your current job?
3 rounds of interviews with different people, followed by the offer letter. That's it.
Did you ever get a feeling that someone is trying to know you better as a person?
See, they are a big brand name.
Why do you want to know more about me and the organization I founded? Is it because we are not a big brand and there's no credible history that you can rely on?
Theater-based behavioral learning can simulate scenarios similar in content but different in context, with the same set of participants bringing out the nuances. It brings about awareness individually and collectively, and by driving outcomes, delivers a desired change in the behavioral journey of an individual or an organization.
And last but not the least, we have grabchai.online.
Hey guys, this is Aditya and Suhas from the GrabChai team. So GrabChai is a platform that allows you to meet interesting people for a curated one-to-one or a group conversation. We're currently home to all kinds of people, including entrepreneurs, VCs, designers, product folks, writers, and lots of creative professionals. The world was going into a lockdown, and having worked remote in the past, we felt the need for a platform that allows you to meet curated, interesting people virtually. Since none of us could meet our closest friends or office colleagues personally, we thought this is something that people would definitely like to use. And through GrabChai, we want to bring more serendipity in people's lives by introducing them to interesting people who they would love to chat with. Head over to grabchai.online and we'd love to chat with you.
So guys, I hope you enjoyed these 3 videos and they gave you an insight into innovative approaches being used by some of our partners in supporting entrepreneurs in their journeys and did help you or will help you in figuring out your ideas and comments on what a real ecosystem should look like for entrepreneurs in the coming years. We have more partners joining the ecosystem, and we should keep spotlighting them. So do follow this conversation with us, as well as our partners. There on the screen, you can see some of our partners, Unsolved Ventures, as well as GrabChai.online. And we also have our panelists here, and we've got you the details of their social media handles. So do follow GAIN, do follow Ada, do follow our panelists, and do follow our other ecosystem partners, and continue the conversation on reimagining the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I noticed that the panel is now back from their breakout session. So over to you, Mekin, for taking us through some of the key takeaways from that discussion.
Okay, thank you, Ruchi, for that. Welcome, everyone. A lot of us are left-brain people who generally only think in zeros and ones and numbers and Excels. So this was a different kind of experience for most of us. But I think it brought out a few interesting pieces. So I'd love for each one to maybe take 1 minute to show their creation, and don't worry, nobody's judging. It's not a drawing competition. And explain your intention behind it, right? So like, what is it? Why did you draw what you drew? And what is it that you were hoping to convey? Whether it conveys or not, wo hum decide kar denge. But you have the liberty of sharing your intention behind it. And I'd love to start with Rashid. Rashid, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, sure. I'm actually going to put on a timer so I do this right. Okay, so shockingly, I have got started with a heart around the entrepreneur because we have to be empathetic towards the entrepreneur. So that's the overall concept. I have then beautifully drawn an entrepreneur opening their mobile phone and opening Google Maps, except it's not Google Maps, it's Google Maps for their goals. And the first question is set your destination. And at every point on Google Maps, the entrepreneur will have 3 options. Do you want to do this alone? Do you want to do this with other people? Do you want an expert guiding you in this? And so basically what I was trying to convey was that the entrepreneur should have choice. The entrepreneur should just be guided towards what are high level things that they need to do in their journey, like set goals. Hey, there's traffic. What is this traffic? Do you want to find out by yourself, with the community, with an expert? So for me, I think empathy and choice were the key concepts I was trying to get across.
Awesome. Rashid, can you tag someone? Who should go next?
Sure. Why don't we have Yukti go next?
So I thought in terms of an ecosystem, I drew a forest. So I'm trying to highlight, first of all, that the roots of the trees go really deep. So this is in terms of the people who are leading the ecosystem have that element of experience and credibility. Then I have showcased the different trees. So this is to, and then there are people who is, the entrepreneur and other members in the community. So the entrepreneur can choose to sit under a tree, to climb a particular branch, or to explore whatever is, or even go up and climb a mountain. That is his path to take. And lastly, the entire ecosystem in a forest is each element is connected to each other. Even when the leaves fall down, they protect the soil and convert it to mulch and so on. And I think it's a very holistic depiction of an ecosystem.
Thank you. Yukti, could you tag someone now?
Nirav.
Thank you. So what I have drawn is a mountain, and there are 2 sides to the mountain. There's one part where the entrepreneur or the climber is obviously choosing to climb a mountain. So they know it's a challenge. It's a challenge that they have to surmount themselves. Now there's this whole marketing ecosystem which is trying to sell them a protein bar, Everest Training Institute, although this guy is only going to 3,000 meters in Himachal to begin with. There's a $5,000 jacket being marketed as your Sherpa. It's called the Sherpa. And if you don't wear that jacket, there's no way you're going to survive this journey, right? On the other side of the mountain, I've got this expedition group, and they're climbing the mountain. There's support structures everywhere. At every level, there is a village. There are people who are serving them food, accommodation, warmth. There's a Sherpa, right? And in case things go wrong, there's a helicopter, that will help them. And while the challenge is there, if things get very risky, then they will have support and they don't have to die. I finally have a horse cart drawn here, which is basically the horse before the cart, but sometimes things go the other way around and the horse can't move forward. I've also tried to draw a cave, and people try to can invent a language like cavemen do, but most children learn from each other and from their parents how to speak, and that is something that can be done as well. So here, lastly, the Sherpa, you can't figure out who the Sherpa is because all your expedition members are also your Sherpa.
Thank you, Nirav. Can you tag someone?
I will tag Anmol.
Sure. What I'll do is I'll share my screen. Yeah. As you can see, I'm very good in drawing. Thanks for the compliment. I knew what you were thinking. So yeah, here you go. In the center, you have the entrepreneur. Okay. And the smile is in red. So it's subject to conditions, right? It really depends if he's smiling or not. But what happens is if he's smiling, there's immediate impact on the family, right? Which is your first inner circle. And then the community, which are the petals around it. So it's like the seed which is budding into a flower. So the impact goes from the family to the community and then to the nation overall, right? So it starts with the entrepreneur. And if the entrepreneur is flourishing, the nation progresses, and the vice versa as well. If the nation has to do well, then it goes all the way back to the entrepreneur and the entrepreneur smiling.
Thank you, Anmol.
Samir, we would love to see what you've got.
Guys, you'll have to give me a pass. I was not carrying paper and crayons because I'm not in the office. I'm outside somewhere. So you'll have to give. I'll have to give it a pass.
You can share your comments.
No, comments is the same thing. I mean, see, ecosystem is like it gets gradually. It's an evolving process. What I would say is, like, I'll contradict my own previous statement now. I'll say it's an evolving process. But unfortunately, what happens, when we talk of just a few entrepreneurs, like, I mean, okay, Amol is there, Yukti is there, and there are a couple of guys. We are pretty mature on this journey. Okay, so that's why we understand, okay, what are the nuances of a system, what exactly should we be expecting out of it, and then we take advantage of that. But I'm talking of those entrepreneurs who are first-time entrepreneurs. They just start up their journey. As a startup, they get glamorized because, like, in fact, I think I had a conversation with you also on this. I mean, due to peer pressure, they get into it without realizing what's happening, what exactly they have to do, and this ecosystem like helps in glamorizing it quite a bit. Okay, so ecosystem has got its own pitfalls. So this should be an enabler. It should not be something which is given to you on a platter. So it should become an enabler. Okay, guys, you've got a problem here. Fine. And mentorship also, like, I mean, it was somebody just commented, I mean, mentorship, like they come dime a dozen now. So, I mean, that also has to be pretty streamlined. It has to be structured, and one should be able to realize, okay, what is the best fit for him. That maturity only comes after a couple of failures. That's what I would say.
Nikin, I hope you've done something as well.
I did, of course. Oh. Like, after having told you guys about my great handwriting, how could I not?
Oh, that's pretty good.
Right. So the visual in my head was that of a village with many paths and people going their own paths, people also building their own paths. there being enough ponds, enough greenery, enough resources around. And yet there being like a village square or a village center where people collect, right? Where so the notion or the ideas being of people creating their own paths, people building, people adding value, and having the freedom to do their own thing. So that element of choice, and yet there being this sense of togetherness, sense of a pride towards my village, कि ये मेरा गांव है, right? Because I'm building it, that hey, this is stuff that I am creating. And I think that pride often comes from innate human goodness / values, that you see good actions, you see enough good actions happen. And I think as a lot more enablement starts happening within the ecosystem, I would think that the pride starts to build, that hey, I'm proud because I truly love what people are doing for each other in this ecosystem. So that was the sense of what I was trying to draw. All right. No, this has been I think it's been a fascinating almost hour and a half, and it's flown by quite quickly.
We should all put up our drawings to get a picture.
Okay. Anmol will need the screen share.
I don't know if I want this captured for eternity, this drawing, to be honest. But sure, yeah.
Well,
okay, good.
We are the most documented generation.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know what is going to be done with all of this documentation, but we are the most documented generation. No, I think it's been a fascinating 1.5 hours where we've had people contradicting each other, contradicting themselves, together arriving at, hey, what we really mean. So we've gone deeper and been able to talk about some nuances. I'd love for the panel to take maybe a 30-second pause and reflect, and then share, hey, the one thing that somebody else on the panel said that like deeply touched you, right? And if that can be the closing of our panel, so let's take 30 seconds and go back to what's the one thing that somebody said on the panel that deeply touched you. Whoever's ready can start.
Sure, I can share because it's been ringing in my ears for a while now. But I really liked what Samir said about plug and play. I think it started out with us sort of disagreeing and debating each other. And then I realized when I was building out my visual and that it's all about choice and they should choose what they want at different points in time, that's essentially it, right? Which is plug and play. So that definitely stuck.
Thank you.
I in fact, go ahead, Yukti.
I really liked what Rashid said about listening to the entrepreneur and not stereotyping the journey that every entrepreneur wants to follow a template of growth or scale, and really listening to them and then assisting them in that direction.
Sure. I like, there was one takeaway from everyone, so I'm going to recall, everyone what they said. So I love what Neerav said, don't put the cart before the horse, don't put the cart after the horse. Rashid spoke about lack of empathy. I think that's something which the ecosystem needs. I think Samir started the discussion on the right note when he said it needs to be entrepreneur driven. Not everyone is going to serve things to you on a platter. Yukti spoke about access. There's a certain SME section which is still struggling, even though we talk about big things, we talk about big relief funds. There's still a certain section which is still being devoid of these benefits. So I think all these were brilliant points.
Samir ji.
No, empathy, the point on empathy was very, very relevant. That I totally agree. I mean, without empathy, because I strongly believe that, whatever we do, and basically, I would like to mention here that any business, it's not just a business. there has to be a social cost to it. I mean, whether you help the other entrepreneurs or whether you're providing employment, whether you're doing anything. So there has to be an element of social cost, and it's a kind of a journey. It's a spiritual journey where you evolve and you understand. It's not just selling a product. You know, it's a larger goal. It's a larger mission. Every life gets touched. Every step of yours creates a new dimension. So empathy is a very strong point, which I would totally tend to agree.
Neerav?
Sure. I think there's one point that everybody touched upon that appeals to me. I think Rashid said there's no one template. Anmol said it's highly personal. It's about your family, and Samir said it has been glamorized, right? Uh, in some societies, even many things such as the prize fighting is glamorized, right? But it could kill you. So I think every entrepreneur should make that choice for themselves in terms of what kind of entrepreneurship they want to choose and at what pace they want to get there. And they should take along their family, their community with them. And I think that point was resonated with me.
Oh, thank you, Neerav. I think for me, it was I think two things. What Samir talked about in terms of entrepreneurs expecting to be served on a platter. I think I could almost visualize like feet on the table, shoes on the table, leaning back, ki ab ye leke aao kinds, right? Like entrepreneurship looking like that versus entrepreneurship being doing a lot of work and working really hard. And also, I think what Yukti talked about in terms of the depth of the roots. So I think that we in India, like our startup ecosystem, if you can call the tech VC startup ecosystem, is barely 10, 20 years old, right? So it's very young roots. You see, hence a lot of, you see what you see as a result of that, right? So these are very, very young roots. But if you go back, our entrepreneurial ecosystem, our ecosystem of entrepreneurship is many centuries old, right? And there are roots that are very, very deep there. And those roots provide nourishment to a lot of budding entrepreneurs. So that was something that resonated a lot with me. So with that, I'd love to hand it over back to Ruchi, not before asking her. She's been listening to all of us. Like, what was the one thing that touched you, Ruchi?
No, I think extremely, extremely gripping and engaging. So I'm sure the audience will love it too. And really will invoke them into thinking what they think the system should be. I think what touched me was really, I mean, I don't know, lots of people said stuff, so I'm not pointing to one person, but really the fact that entrepreneurship, you are at the heart of it, the entrepreneur is the heart of it, but the ecosystem is really about the choices that it can offer, so that they can pull what they want and create their own journeys. And really this thing of not being in a pigeonhole where there are specific milestones to achieve and specific timelines. Each entrepreneur has his own journey. So how does the ecosystem create that choice, which an entrepreneur can pick and play? I thought really resonated with me, and really going beyond funding and networking, which is what we call ecosystem today, and bashing that completely. So I think those were the two key takeaways from me.
Thank you so much, Ruchi, for sharing. Thank you, everyone, for participating with your heart, your pencils, and your full self. Thank you so much.
So just before we end, just to the audience who's watching us on all our social media handles, invite you all to continue this discussion on our LinkedIn pages and on our Facebook pages. They're right there, along with the hashtags that are available. Also do visit the GAME website and the other website for more insights on this topic. And if you would love to join us as a partner or as an entrepreneur, join our ADA community, we welcome you. So, I mean, we'd love to have more people to discuss this with. So we plan to come together again for yet another session where we'll go deeper into areas like entrepreneurship, community building, social learning techniques, and reimagining the entrepreneur ecosystem. So hope you all keep joining us through the year. Thank you once again for joining us today, and bye for now.